This lab is a copper cycle lab, and maybe you'll see what it means as we get through this, but we're going to go around in a cycle and change copper into different compounds. Okay? I want you to pay attention to the different compounds as we do it. The copper is going to start off in this copper 2 nitrate solution, and we're going to be adding some sodium hydroxide solution to it. We've got a water bath already set up that I'm going to be able to use after I combine these two different solutions. There's a double displacement reaction that takes place. I'm putting in some of the copper 2 nitrate solution. I'm using more than what the directions say, just so that it maybe is more visible. There it is in the test tube. And I'm going to add some sodium hydroxide solution to that as well. That's a clear solution, and it forms a precipitate. That's a precipitate of copper 2 hydroxide. You'll want to be able to write the formula for copper 2 hydroxide. That's a Roman numeral 2. That's our precipitate that's in there. You're supposed to note what it appears like in the data table. In number 5, step number 5, we're going to put this test tube in the hot water bath. I've added a little bit of water to it just to increase the volume a little bit. And you should have noticed that there was a color change. So now I've put the test tube in the hot water, and it's going to heat for a little while. So I'm going to turn this into a time-lapse video. That took a lot longer than it looked like right there, but eventually it turned to that color. What you see is copper 2 oxide, and when I take it out, that solid copper 2 oxide settles to the bottom. And number 8, it says to use a pipette to remove some of the liquid, leaving the solid. So I did the first one with the time lapse, but then I'm going to do this with a real-time video showing you that I'm just using a pipette and squeezing it first, and then putting the tip into the liquid, and then slowly letting up on the squeezing, and liquid is drawn up into the pipette. And I want to try to get rid of as much of the liquid as I can without getting rid of any, if possible, of the black solid. All right, and then step 9, I added some distilled water and let it settle some more. I'm really cleaning this up. I mean, it's rinsing, to be honest, but the technical chemistry term is we're washing this black solid. And it's doing what you would think washing is supposed to do. It's getting rid of stuff that you don't want. So there's things dissolved in this liquid that are not the copper 2 oxide. We're going to try to get as close as possible to just having the copper 2 oxide and water in there. And so I let this settle several times, did the time-lapse thing, and I think I probably have done that enough. And now I'm going to add number 10, 3 molar hydrochloric acid. I'm actually going big with this one, and this is pretty concentrated acid, HCl. See the script L? Guys, the chlorine that's an L, not an I in the symbol for chlorine, right? Lowercase letter. When I add the acid, look what happens. It's my favorite part. So that black solid is starting to react with the acid, and it goes away. Now, I got to get it to mix up. It looks like I've got some of that copper 2 oxide just sitting on the bottom, and I'm having a hard time getting it to react. But I can stir this up in a way where I hold on to the test tube firmly and smack my finger against it, and that gets that stuff off the bottom, gets the liquid swirling around. There's a little bit more in there, and I'm not going to quite be able to get rid of all of it this way, but it's almost all gone. And so this light blue solution, this is a copper 2 chloride solution. So now the copper is in a different compound sort of form. In a sense, copper 2 chloride. And then in step number 11, it says to add a piece of aluminum wire. So I'm going to do that. I've got a piece of aluminum wire, and I'm going to put it in there. And once again, I'm going to do a time lapse here, because this took a lot longer than it looks like. That time lapse video, you see the wire seems like it gets fatter or something. What that is copper. It's a brownish color. That's solid copper that has formed there. Notice the color of the solution has changed also, and we've got copper forming around the wire. There's also bubbles forming, so that's something you should note. So we also made aluminum chloride solution and hydrogen gas. The bubbles are hydrogen gas. To complete the cycle, we need to get this copper turned back into copper 2 nitrate. So we can do this. I've moved to the hood where there's a fan, and I can make sure that the air is blowing out here, because I'm going to produce a death gas here pretty soon. I'm trying to get the copper out of the test tube, make sure I got all of it, and I just have a little paper towel down here on the bottom, and you can see the pieces of copper I've got. And the paper towel soaks up some of the water. There's a little piece of aluminum that was stuck in there too. So pretty much that's copper and some water, hopefully. And I'm going to put it all in this beaker so that I can add some nitric acid to it. This one is not on the list of steps, but this is how we can complete the cycle. We can get this copper that's in elemental form back into the form of copper 2 nitrate in a solution. Remember that solution was blue in the beginning? So maybe it'll be easier to see if I put it up high on this thing. Move the test tube out of the way. Slide this over. Got a nice white background. I think you'll be able to see. And here, this is nitric acid. Nitric acid. That's a hydrogen ion with a nitrate ion. This is nitric acid. So I'm going to add a little bit. I don't need very much of this, because this stuff I've got is really concentrated. I'm going to add the nitric acid. And notice the color change and what happens when I get a little bit in there. I'll add a little bit more. You should see a brown gas being formed. And the liquid has turned green. And that copper looks like it has all been reacted. Now it's a green liquid, but this is a different kind of chemistry. But if I add a little bit of water, that will turn blue. Now it's not going to be as dark of blue as what we started with, because it's not as concentrated. But this new blue solution in the beaker is copper 2 nitrate solution dissolved in water. So we've gone full circle, started with copper 2 nitrate and made a bunch of different copper compounds and made straight up copper as an element, and then back to copper 2 nitrate.